Today we are joined by Feroze, who's best known for Against All Odds documentary. He's a Chelsea content creator, and we're going to grill him with questions today about the potential Jonathan David to Chelsea rumors that are going on. First things first, though, Feroze, how you doing?
I am doing good. Appreciate you for having me, and really excited about this. Really excited about like this whole situation in terms of JD being linked to the club I love.
I'm gonna say you're Canadian as well, so this is gonna be fun. I too am a Chelsea fan. They are my Premier League team, so I haven't talked about them much on the channel. So I'm excited just to throw a bunch of questions your way, starting with the very first one. And I just want to know what you're hearing and what's the latest on this rumor. Do you have any other knowledge on it, and do you think it's going to happen?
I think it is going to happen just because of the price tag, and he's done pretty well in terms of like the goals he scored over the past few years. And slowly we keep hearing more and more that it's getting closer. And overall I was sort of like I don't know how I feel about this because I'm a Chelsea fan and I'm Canadian, but it just seems likely and I'm more and more open to it each day.
Beautiful. Now, Chelsea have had a manager merry-go-round for the last little bit. Enzo Maresca is the next man up. I want to know, how do you think David could potentially fit in that system, and do you think he could thrive under the new manager?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the new manager, the way he likes to play, right? It like Maresca ball, as a lot of Chelsea fans have been researching, just loves to press, have the ball at all times, play beautiful football, right? I mean, hey, he worked with Pep when they won the treble, so that was a huge plus. And I think Jonathan David can thrive in that system, right? Just because it's not like he just scores goals. He actually links up play, gets other people involved as well. So I'm really optimistic in terms of like the style of play situation, which is why this transfer makes a lot of sense.
I think Jonathan David is one of the best pressing strikers you're going to find. Like you said, it's not always on the ball.
Yep.
He can link up, he can score, but off the ball, he does an incredible amount of work. So I'm excited for it a little bit. Well, I am a little disappointed that Pochettino ended up leaving, but that's a whole other story. My next question for you, though, is looking at the striker depth. When I imagine this move with Jonathan David, Maresca plays a 4-2-3-1. Really, there's only one spot for him, and that is to be the striker. So I want to ask you first, what does the striker depth look like? There's been some movement. I'm still expecting some strikers to probably leave Chelsea. You have Jackson there. And would you expect David to start?
I wouldn't expect David to start, because the thing with Nicholas Jackson is, right, obviously we all like, as Chelsea fans, have been really particular about getting a striker who can get goals, right? That's the number one thing, because people talk about the whole number 9 curse at the club, and the one thing Nicholas Jackson has done is he scored decent amount of goals in his first season. And when you put it into perspective, a lot of Chelsea fans are still upset because he isn't finishing a lot of his chances. He scored 15 goals, but he could have easily had 20-25 at least, easily. But that's the thing, right? The only way you can get better is by playing the game. And that's what a lot of Chelsea fans expect Nicholas Jackson to maintain that and play, improve, and slowly get into the level that we expect him to be. Now, along with that, Chelsea are on the verge of getting Barcelona youngster, who's a striker as well, Mark Guiu. And same thing, he is leaving Barcelona because he wants minutes as well. So this is where it gets tricky, right? Because obviously I would like JD. Initially, I was, as I said, hesitant. But at the same time, when you think about the price tag, when you think about his experience and how many goals he scored over the last few years in France, it makes sense. But it's all about expectations, which is why I think when Chelsea fans hear Jonathan David and people go like, is he clinical? Is it a repeat of Jackson? Because don't get me wrong, Jonathan David knows how to score, but he also at times has been frustrating, right? For both the country as well as the club, which is why I feel like I am optimistic in terms of like this deal happening and, him becoming a Chelsea player and doing good. But my level of good is, hey, you know what? Come off the bench here and there and like probably rotate with our other potential backup striker and take your chances. And if you do take your chances and you play on merit, and eventually if you are better than Nicholas Jackson and you get those goals, then you know what? Be the starter. But I feel like expectation for a lot of Chelsea fans could benefit him.
I like the way you described that because, like I said, I mean, I watched a lot of Chelsea games as well, so I know how frustrating of a player Nicholas Jackson can be. 15 goals in your first season in the Premier League is nothing to
Yeah.
be embarrassed about. But he, like you mentioned, he missed a ton of chances, and if you look at Jonathan David, just his stats alone, you'll know he can put the ball in the net. There's no denying that. But if you use the eye test and you watch him over the years he's been at Lille, you'll notice that he'll have a lot of goal droughts, and then all of a sudden he'll catch fire. So I'm curious to see the way that these two could potentially go toe to toe. Where if Nicholas Jackson has one of those games where he can't score goals, it's not like you had the greatest of options last season to replace him. But with Jonathan David right there, I think those two could just push each other and make each other better. So on that note, though, like you said, a youngster coming in, I'm still expecting like I'm assuming a couple strikers. I don't even know how many. Like Lukaku's still there. There's just few strikers who have to go out. How many do you think Maresca will keep? Do you think if David comes in, do you think he'll keep three, or what do you think the depth will look like?
I think he will keep three, but when I say three, it could be in four if we consider Nkuku as a striker. Nkuku is sort of like a 10-second striker, but three would be the ideal move in terms of Nicholas Jackson, Margioi, and even obviously Jonathan David.
Okay, now you brought it up. You brought the number 9 curse up. Nicholas Jackson chose not to wear number 9 this past season. It's available. I don't know if David comes, if he would take it, but number aside, just talking about the number 9 curse, how much pressure do you think David will be under if he does end up joining Chelsea?
I don't think there's going to be a lot of pressure, as I said earlier, because of his transfer fees, right? If he was like 40, 50 million, which in today's market, he probably is worth that. However, the fact that he has only 1 year left is really, really beneficial to Chelsea. Plus, those things set expectations. Unfortunately, in this day and age, that's how it works. It just works like that. Whether a player is actually worth 100 million or 10 million, it all depends on obviously how the market is, right? It's not the player's fault. So I think the fact that he's going to be sort of only 20, 25 million, it's weird to say only, but you know, in 2024, that's not a lot. It is going to benefit him because expectations will not be that high for Chelsea fans. Because with all due respect to Jonathan David, when Chelsea did sign Nicholas Jackson, what a lot of fans, including myself, were saying, you know what, we need to get a world-class striker or a striker to play for Chelsea Football Club, right? It could be like a Drogba style, you know, in terms of like a big name. And that didn't happen. And we just threw Nicholas Jackson right in the deep end and we're like, hey, figure it out, right? Because of all that, because of what Chelsea fans have experienced the last like few years, it's like expectations are going to be low, especially as you brought up, especially for the striker role. And if you add the transfer fees along with being the backup striker, he's going to exceed expectations. Even though he is frustrating at times, he gets goals. And I think, as you mentioned, right, the link-up play is going to be really important too.
Now, the funny thing is, for a while, I've really wanted to see Jonathan David go to Italy, just because I felt, again, when we talk about pressure, last season, I mean, I think he was probably worth around 50 million euros. Lille wanted 60. It's a big reason why that transfer never happened. But if you're going to spend that much, I would have preferred him over in Serie A. I felt like there was some clubs there that could have really suited his game, and the pressure just wasn't there. But Jonathan David has gone on record saying how much he admires the Premier League and how he can't even imagine playing anywhere else besides there. Now, like you said, that if the rumors are true and it's 25 to 30 million euros, that is pennies to some of these Premier League sides. I mean, Brentford, Crystal Palace could afford him at this rate. So I want to know, like, I guess in terms of Chelsea's new transfer strategy, which I don't even really know if I can describe it. I guess it's just kind of looking for clever deals. Nicholas Jackson's a good example. If you're able to get Jonathan David for those 25, 30 million euros, does that 24-year-old striker at that price fall directly in line with what Todd Boehly wants to do?
Hand in hand, because the Chelsea transfer policy, the whole under 25, 26 rule, it covers that. Then obviously cheap in terms of 20, 25 million. That's another check mark. And then accepting the role of, hey, like being around the team and, you know, try taking opportunity. Check that as well. And the biggest thing is wages. His salary is not going to be anything crazy, which is why like 2-3 deals this transfer window couldn't be done because of just high wages. So even that is going to be covered. So I feel like in terms of the ideal Chelsea transfer model from Todd Boehly and Iqbali, it just covers every single thing, which is why When I first saw it, I was like, wait, what? And then within 5 minutes, I was like, yes, this makes the most sense.
So your attitude changed a little bit about it. You kind of touched on it, but I want you to dig a little bit deeper. I want to know what the media thinks about this versus what the fans think about it. And I've seen a lot of split online, a lot of split decisions of Chelsea fans really liking it and really not liking it. So what do you think the media thinks right now versus what the fans do?
Ooh, I love that. I love that. So the media is, I feel like, a lot more welcoming for this because they sort of think about it logically, right? And they go like, hey, he scored a lot of goals in France. He's done well for Canada as well in terms of just numbers. When they see numbers, it makes sense, right? And when you sort of compare that with what the fans are saying, right? Like for me, obviously being Canadian, I watched a lot of him, right? Many people are not familiar with him, but when other people describe him on social media, they say it's another Nicholas Jackson situation, which is pretty much he scores goals, but he misses and wastes a lot of chances, right? So frustration could kick in for all these fans, which is why it's exactly what I mentioned in terms of like when people like fans think about Chelsea Football Club, right? Which Chelsea Football Club are they thinking about? Are they thinking about the ones that used to win titles every single season and get the best of the best, or the ones that right now have been like leading towards like ninth, 10th the past few seasons, right? Unfortunately, that's just the case, and which is why if people think like the media would be better, but a lot of Chelsea fans actually aren't too happy about it. However, I feel like when they understand a lot of these things in terms of like wages and him understanding his role and how this could work, they will be a lot more open to it.
Now, I think the interesting thing is now I'm just coming from the Canadian fans.
Yeah.
There, a lot of what I see is a lot of them just want to move because this has been going on for years. They want to move,
Yeah.
but a lot, I don't know, a lot don't really want Chelsea just because of the chaos that's this club has been under for the past few seasons. Now, I thought last season was a great step up, sixth place finish. I mean,
Yeah.
the start wasn't great, but I really enjoyed the ending watching them. They got rid of Poch. I have some question marks. So the number one thing I hear from Canadian fans is, I don't know about this chaos. Maybe David's better elsewhere. What would you say as a Canadian and a Chelsea fan to those fans about those concerns, and do you think they're valid?
Yes, of course, 100%, right? Like the club overall, it hasn't been that great the last two seasons, right? Especially like with as you mentioned, right, like the whole Pochettino situation and all. Like when I do put my bias aside, I think if I think logically, and not as a Chelsea fan, he could go maybe like Tottenham could suit him, right? And then I want to throw up saying that because obviously, right, like Spurs and Chelsea don't have the best of relationships. But I'm saying like, you know, it would make sense for him to go somewhere where he could get first team football, right? And actually get the minutes in and really be the star. At Chelsea, he's not going to be the star, right? He has to sort of like work himself up. And you know what? That could sort of work out. And I think that's the thing, right? It could work out, but at the same time, one horrible thing about Chelsea is the whole, as I mentioned earlier, the whole under 25 rule. There is no experience whatsoever. The squad needs experience because experience brings balance, which can really help obviously the entire like team, the situation and stuff. So I definitely understand when they go like, hey, you know what? It's a graveyard because same thing, right? Like in terms of strikers, the last like 15 odd years, like how many successful strikers have come to Chelsea and done well? Either they come score a few goals, their confidence goes like down, in the water, and then of course they go like, no, this is not working. We need to move on, or they just don't get minutes. Things just don't work out. I would compare this transfer to like a Dembaba, Loic Remy when they joined Chelsea and they started like doing well and they had like a decent reputation, right? Nothing good, nothing too bad. That's how I see it.
Now, the one thing I'll put my 2 cents in, I think Jonathan David's prime for a move. I think the nice thing, like you mentioned, with the 25-year-olds and under strategy with Chelsea is David is a leader within his team. Going a Canadian boy going over to Lille, he's worn the armband there. He's relied on. He's in the leadership group with Canada, so maybe that's something else to look for. I think he backs himself, and I think I was hesitant for a while too about whether I think he was made to go to the Premier League or maybe try his trade elsewhere. I'm really warming up to the idea. I like that you mentioned with the transfer value and probably taking some of the pressure off. And I do really hope that this move happens. I think David's ready for it. So my final question for you is a simple one, a yes or no. Do you think David has what it takes to be successful in the Premier League?
1000%.
With that being said, Feroze, thank you so much for coming on today. We'll put links to your socials down in the description. I really appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
Thank you for having me.